The boy who walked to the stars. Let's always keep hope alive. The hook. In a small village where the nights had no streetlights and the roads were made of red dust, there lived a boy who believed in something invisible. His name was Kofi. Every evening, when the sun disappeared behind the distant trees and the sky slowly filled with stars, the other children in the village ran outside to play. Their laughter echoed across the fields. But Kofi did something different. While the other children chased each other under the moonlight, Kofi sat quietly beside a small kerosene lamp and read. The flame flickered softly, barely strong enough to push back the darkness. Beside him, always, sat his grandmother. Her name was Nanan. She held the lamp steady so the light would fall across the pages of his book. Her hands were rough from years of working the fields, but they never shook when she held the lamp for him. Nanan could not read a single word in the books Kofi loved so much. But every night she watched him read as if those pages contained the future itself. Because in her heart, she believed they did. The secret. For many years, Nanan carried a secret. Hidden inside an old tin box, wrapped in a piece of faded cloth, were several photographs. They were pictures of people Kofi had never met. There was a man with kind eyes. There was a young girl smiling gently at the camera. And there was a boy who looked as if he might one day grow into someone strong and brave. They were his family, his father, his sister, his brother. They had been taken across the ocean long before Kofi was born, carried away by the complicated turns of life that children are too young to understand. For years Nanan never spoke about them. But one quiet evening, when the wind moved softly through the trees and the kerosene lamp burned low, she opened the tin box and placed the photographs into Kofi's hands. "These are your family," she said softly. Kofi stared at the faces, trying to imagine their voices and the lives they had lived far away from the village. "Where are they?" he asked. Nanan looked out into the darkness beyond their small doorway. "Far away," she said. Then she leaned closer and whispered something that would stay with Kofi for the rest of his life. "One day, you will find them. Promise me." Kofi did not know how such a promise could ever be kept. But he saw the hope in his grandmother's eyes. And so he nodded. "I promise." The struggle. Life in the village was not easy. Each morning before the sun rose, Kofi walked with Nanan into the fields. They planted rice. They harvested vegetables. They worked the red earth with their hands while the sun climbed higher into the sky. The days were long and the work was hard. But when night returned and the village grew quiet, Kofi always went back to his books. Under the small flickering light of the kerosene lamp, he read about distant places. He read about cities filled with lights. He read about oceans and airplanes and worlds far beyond the narrow dirt road that ran through his village. And beside him, just as she always had, Nanan sat silently and watched. She never told him he would become famous. She never spoke about money or success. Instead she repeated one simple truth. "The sun will rise again, my son. And so will you." The promise kept. Years passed. The small boy slowly grew into a young man. His books became thicker. His dreams became larger. One day, an opportunity arrived that no one in the village had ever imagined. Kofi earned a chance to study in the capital city. The day he left the village, Nanan walked with him to the end of the dusty road. The same road he had walked his entire life. Before he climbed onto the bus, she placed the old tin box into his hands. "Do not forget your promise," she said. Kofi never forgot. In the capital city the world felt enormous. Cars rushed through crowded streets. Tall buildings stretched toward the sky. People moved quickly, chasing lives Kofi had never known existed. But every day he studied harder than he had ever studied before. And every night, the photographs inside the tin box reminded him why. The search. Years later, Kofi traveled even farther. His studies carried him across the ocean to a city called New York. The city never slept. Lights covered the streets like stars that had fallen to the earth. But even there, far from the village, Kofi never forgot his promise. He searched through records. He followed old names. He read documents that reached back through decades of time. Many days the search felt impossible. But hope has a strange power. It keeps whispering to those who refuse to stop listening. And one day, after years of searching, Kofi found something. A name. A connection. A path that led to a country far away. France. With trembling hands, he picked up the phone and dialed a number. On the other side of the ocean, the phone rang. An old man answered. Hello. For a moment Kofi could not speak. His heart pounded in his chest. Then finally he said the words he had carried his entire life. I believe you are my father. The silence that followed felt endless. Then the voice on the other end began to tremble. The two men spoke for hours. There were tears. There were apologies. There were long pauses where neither of them knew what to say. And before the call ended, Kofi said something he never imagined he would be able to say. I forgive you. Plans were made. A reunion was planned. But sometimes life moves in ways no one can control. Before they could meet, Kofi's father passed away. The reunion. But the story was not over. Because Kofi still had a sister. And a brother. They were waiting. Kofi boarded a plane and crossed the ocean once more. When he arrived in France, he stood in front of a door he had only seen in photographs. He knocked. The door slowly opened. 3 strangers stood facing each other. Then suddenly they embraced. Decades of separation disappeared in a single moment. That night they sat together and talked until dawn. They shared memories of the lives they had lived apart. They laughed at the strange similarities they discovered. They cried for the years they had lost. And far away in the village, their mother watched through a small screen as her children finally saw each other again. Tears rolled down her face as she whispered their names. Nanan did not live to see that day. But Kofi knew in his heart that she had believed it would come. The triumph. Eventually Kofi returned to the village. The road was still made of red dust. The night sky still glowed with stars. He walked slowly to the place where Nanan rested. In his hands he carried a photograph. But this time it was not a picture of strangers hidden in an old tin box. It was a photograph of his sister and his brother. Alive. Smiling. Family. He placed the photograph beside her resting place. I kept my promise, Nanan, he whispered. But Kofi was not finished. Because hope is not meant to stop with one story. So he built something in the village. A small library. A place where children could sit beneath a gentle light and open books that carried them far beyond the limits of their world. A place where another child might one day discover a dream larger than the road outside their door. The boy who once walked barefoot through red dust had walked all the way to the stars. And in the end, he brought the stars back home. The closing. Kofi's story is not only his. It belongs to every child who ever made a promise that seemed impossible. Every dreamer who crossed oceans, searching for something they refused to give up on. Every heart that chose forgiveness instead of bitterness. Hope has a quiet power. It waits. It grows. And sometimes, When we refuse to let it die, it leads us exactly where we were meant to go. So if today feels heavy, if the road in front of you seems too long, remember the boy who read by a small kerosene lamp in a village with no streetlights. The same fire that burned inside his heart lives inside you. Take a breath, look toward tomorrow, and keep hope alive.
Ready for more inspiration? Subscribe and let's keep hope alive together.